Okay. All right, we're ready to go. All you really need to do, although I can do it for you, is hit page up, page down to go up and down. Here's the next page, which is page down. The previous page is page up. Let me get your pointer for you if I can. There you go. If you need a pointer, it's the center button.
Oh, okay.
Isn't all this technology just something else? Okay, guys, heads up.
Okay. Hello out there in Radio Land. Welcome to the 2021 Sweepstakes presentation. This is Ty, K3MM, and Jim Nitzberg helped me put together the presentation. And hopefully you've seen this, probably seen this many times before, but hopefully you'll remember something that you forgot, or a couple of things you haven't forgot from last year, or maybe it's brand new to you. But as usual, we're making a big push for the 2021 Sweepstakes coming up here very shortly. And we'd like to get everybody on to put in an effort in both modes if they can. There we go. So our club challenge is to set a new club records. And so we've been handily beating the competition. And I guess the biggest score we ever put in was in 2018. So we got a target this year of trying to beat the 2018 score. And COVID-19 is still out there, so it's still creating a little extra participation. And hopefully we can use that to our advantage to create a new record club score. And as usual, we're looking for phone only ops to get on for CW, give it a shot, and vice versa. And I'd like to encourage the chapter leaders to get out the participants and talk it up at your local meetings, although we're getting short on time. From a historical perspective, our consistent winning formula is operating both modes and maintaining a massive sideband turnout. That's where we normally really clobber the competition is in sideband. And but we're still encouraging everybody to try to operate the other mode, whichever one you're not most comfortable with, and put in a part-time effort for a few hours maybe, and turn in a decent score. And we need everybody's participation. So our club strategy is to encourage individual operators to set higher goals for themselves from the previous year or years. And as usual, we promote single op high power operations, high power or unlimited high power. They tend to be the most bang for the buck as far as the points for the club. And multi-ops are kind of discouraged if you're at all capable on a single op station, because sweepstakes, you don't really need great antennas. You just need to put your butt in the chair and make some contacts. And normally a bunch of single ops will make a much higher score than one multi-op, even if it's a good one. Individual operators contribute far more, as I just said, and parallel single ops at a superstation like W3LPL does are kind of the exception. So your individual strategies, these are just really basic strategies, is make sure you're on at the beginning of the contest, Saturday afternoon. It's a good idea to listen to the bands 30 minutes at least before the start. get an idea where the propagation is, where the activity is, and then plan to operate until 2 or 3 a.m. on Sunday morning if you can. And usually you don't want to give up too early unless the conditions are really strange, because you get back on and you want to get back on by 6 or 7 a.m. But things will be tapering off around 2 to 3, but you want to kind of stick it out because it can get really slow on Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Save any time you have left over, say for your time off for Sunday afternoons in half-hour increments. Get a little something to eat or take a break, and when things get really slow. And if you can only do a few hours, or if you're low power or low power, show up on Sunday, late on Sunday, and you'll be fresh meat. And lots of people have been trying to work you, especially on CW. If you get on CW, because the skimmers, as soon as you call CQ a couple of times, you'll be inundated. And one of the important things, of course, is test out all your equipment far in advance the contest dates. Hopefully before the CQ Worldwide weekend, you'll be setting up for CW, make sure it all works. But certainly the day or two after, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of check out all your antennas, get everything set up for CW, and work out all your canned messages the way you want. And if you're SO2R, you have at least twice the work to do all this stuff and get it tweaked right. So make sure you get involved way ahead of time. CW be the first sweepstakes mode. So there'll be a lot of, if you're going to work spots, there'll be an endless supply of spots from skimmers. For sideband, make sure your sideband audio is optimized, your transmit audio. And normally we have an activity evening or two before sideband. People can get on at 3830 or something like that and kind of test out their messages and test out their equalization on their audio, see if it's contest worthy. And we'll give you lots of free advice. Remember, sweepstakes is all about rate. There's a limited pot of multipliers. You'll work them just about all of them anyway without even trying if you're on for a few hours. So the main thing you want to do is keep your rate up and always watch the rate meter. If you see it start taping off, then you might want to consider changing bands or at least changing frequencies. Go call CQ, run them versus SMP. There's all sorts of strategies, kind of depends on your station, what works best for you and what you feel most comfortable with. And it's usually advised not to chase multipliers. Like they'll normally come to you after, if you've been on for several hours, you'll work almost all of them. And if you're working assisted, you'll have plenty of opportunities usually to work the last one or two and off a spot. Usually I found that Alaska comes in around dusk. So that's a good time to work for Alaska, and you only need on one band since we're not working on per band basis. So whatever band works best for you for Alaska, which would normally be 40, 20, maybe 15. But I usually find right around dusk is when it peaks for the East Coast. If you're a SO2R, you're always calling CQ on at least one radio while searching pouncing on your second. If things get really slow, I'll usually alternate CQ, especially on sideband. And you want to be on a frequency you can hold relatively easily if you're doing that. Normally it'll be one band that's really hot and the other one's not so hot. So you can pick a frequency that's maybe not quite in such demand and be able to hold it. And always keep an eye out if you're running assisted for somebody spotting you, because you'll have a nice flurry of another dozen or so contacts probably before it tapers off again. So the next spot for your station comes along. If you're in assisted CW, grab and pounce with both rays can be very productive if you're efficient at it. I'm okay at it. I'm not great. Tim's great. N3QE. He amazes me what he does with one radio, grabbing and pouncing most of his QSOs. But it's a fun way to do the contest, and it's fairly productive, especially on CW. Not so much on phone because you'll run out of people to work. But it's an endless supply of skims on CW. And again, with the contest logging, you want to be very accurate. Do not bust the call sign, whatever you do, because that's when you get penalties. If you bust something in the exchange, you'll lose the contact, but you won't get any penalty QSOs. And it's a long exchange. So if you need a repeat, try to get the repeat, because otherwise you won't get credit for the contact, and he probably won't work you again unless you call him. And they kind of discourage dupes because it's a long exchange. It's not like CQ Worldwide when you know what the exchange is going to be. So work on your accuracy is very important. When you're starting out in the medium gun, meter two, it's pretty important.
We've lost Ty's audio, but we did hit a big cough.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. When did you lose me?
get to the lowest band with short sketch.
Oh, okay. So not too long ago. Okay. Yeah. So you want to get to, especially 75 phone, I find is very productive. Not from the East Coast. Try to work the population centers, which in our case is up and down the East Coast. And you can make a ton of contacts, especially on 75 phone. I generally stay, you want to try to be above 3,800 if you can avoid the normal interference from nets and whatever, or pseudo nets. So the first night you might want to try down below 3,800. And then when you get desperate for contacts, you move up above 3,800 if you can find a frequency. If you go up too high, I found that the rate falls off, but you will work some generals that you normally wouldn't work below 3,800. And as usual with sweepstakes, it's important to play to your station strengths. So, because you only have to work them on one band. So if you have a great 75 meter antenna and good experience with it on the East Coast, certainly that's where you want to spend a bulk of your time, and more time than say on 20 if you're got a low wire or something like that and you have a hard time even breaking pileups. But you kind of have to know your own station, what works for you, and just encourage you to use what works the best on your station, since you only have to work them once per for the whole contest. Another thing is, don't get psyched out by high numbers. I don't normally have the really high number when I start. For some reason, I'm a little slow starting. But by the end of the contest, I'm pretty competitive. I just plot away on Sunday afternoon, alternate CQing and stuff like that, and it all adds up. I encourage you to start on a lower band. Normally you'll hear West Coast working 15, running 15, maybe even 10. And you won't hear anybody else. Maybe you might hear Texas. And but there's not going to be a good depth of QSOs there if you're calling CQ. Your rate's not going to be that good. So unless you're running 2 radios, you'd probably want to start on 20 or even 40 maybe at the start of the contest. Just have to play that one by ear. But probably 20 is where you're going to want to start. And if you have a second radio, you could do a little 15 or maybe do some 40 meters on a low dipole for some short skip. If you're running packet and skimmer, don't waste time in the pileups. If you can get there first before anybody, if you're real quick about it, it's a great way to make contacts. If he doesn't have a booming signal to you, you're probably not booming to him either, and you're probably gonna have a hard time. So another thing you can do is go a little further down the list once they've been spotted for 5 minutes or so, and go back to work them that way. If you don't get them the first call right when they appear. As usual for sweepstakes, efficiency and fairly low efficient antennas are the name of the game. Dipoles at 35 feet, probably, it depends on the band, but 50 foot on 40 meters, 20 meters. They're excellent antennas for sweepstakes. And you know how your antennas work stateside. You should be able to figure out where you want to be. 10 and 15 are probably not going to be very good bands unless we all of a sudden get a bunch of sunspot activity. But again, get on early and take a look. Maybe call a couple CQs, see what comes back to you. On 75 and 80, if you have a U beverage antenna, receive antenna of some sort, it can be very important, especially if there's storms in the area, which this year seems to be there's always a storm somewhere around close by creating noise. So having a good receive antenna, especially in a couple of key directions, can really help you out on 75 and 80. As far as in the shack, you want to make sure you have some snacks. You don't want to, I generally don't eat very much. I have like some granola bars standing by or some peanuts or something like that. It's kind of hard to eat and talk on a sideband, but especially on CW, I'll eat a little bit and have some water, and I have my Excedrin handy just in case. Oh, and the other thing is I have a mason jar available if I have a great run frequency on phone and don't want to get up. So here we're talking about low band, going to the low frequencies early. I expect this is still going to apply. You want to aim for 80 when it's got the short skip, so you can work up and down the East Coast and work all those New York and New England stations and New Jersey and Pennsylvania. There's a huge population of hams there to work. And you'll work the Californias later on the high bands or something, but it's very important to get it when it's short into the East Coast for everybody on the East Coast. Again, you want to watch your rate meter, and whatever's increasing your rate, do it. If it's not, if your rate's decreasing, you start looking for something else to do that you think might work. You can check 160 if 80 goes long, especially on CW, it might be productive, but it's going to be kind of a last resort. I don't expect too much activity on 160 that isn't already on 80. So for sweepstakes, you only work them once per the contest. 160, there might be a few 160 specialists in there, but I don't expect too much activity. But again, it might be worth a shot just to make a quick look. And again, we talked about wired antennas and low power. 40 meters being a good place to start. It's working some of that short skip, and there's not a lot of competition at the beginning on 40, so you'll be heard and start working on the East Coast stations. So SO2R operators using dual pounds can achieve higher rates than running. It's possible. It depends on your station a lot. And you have to be really efficient at it. And it's a lot of fun to do. And Tim N3QE does great with one radio. He does a lot of pouncing. He's got an 80. He's got a doublet and one doublet antenna for all his bands at about 80 feet, and he kicks butt on that with that. And so you don't need two radios. It helps, but two radios is not the advantages for other contests where the exchange is a lot shorter, because it's pretty hard to interleave QSO sweepstakes. But still, when things get slow, you can alternate CQ, and that's a little bit helpful. On CW, of course, the quality of spots is excellent because they're all skims. I kind of discourage anybody from spotting on CW unless they don't see it in their band map, but because it's pretty hard to beat the skimmer unless somebody's been sending their call broken up or something like that, because they're interrupting their transmissions and things like that. But it's usually an endless supply of CW spots on skims. Phone is completely different. Like I mentioned before, we recommend running assisted class for CW. If you're looking for an endless supply of stations to work, and get your station set up so you can grab them and go work them quickly and move on to the next one. Another thing to do if you're speed limited as to what you can copy, call it what you feel comfortable with, because you got to copy their exchange for it to count for you. So you can go up a little higher in the band, maybe where there's slower stations to start with, if you're not comfortable at the low end of the band. And make sure you just make them slow down, ask for a repeat, and then they'll slow down if they're doing their job correctly. Again, you can grab and pounce by clicking spots. You can slide up and down the band map using control right and left arrow, things like that. It'll scan to the next available QSO for you, things like that. It was pretty slick what you can do with N1MM if you're savvy with it. One thing, if you're searching and pouncing and you on CW and speed's not very good, you can pre-fill the exchange if you verify the call sign's correct and listen to a couple of exchanges to make sure you have it before you call them, and you're assured to get a good QSO. And as mentioned there, usually the only thing that's going to change for you is the serial number. Everything else will stay the same. So you can even anticipate what number you're going to get if you're paying attention to that. Using a histophile, I recommend it. You just have to be a little careful because people do move around a lot these days, or they're running a lot of remote operations. So especially their section might change. And also the history files, they're never 100%. But it's a good way to reverse check your if you're not sure about the call sign and you got the exchange and it matches what was in the history file, you can be pretty much assured that it's you got the call correctly without a repeat. I recommend VE7CC as an excellent mode. The node for spots. They filter out their spots a bit. It's got a good quantity, and they're usually always available to connect to. So that's the one I normally use. I'll use W3LPL kind of as a backup or in parallel, but I like VE7CC. Consider adding some filters, like limiting your skims to I would say North America for sure, but you can also restrict it to USA or even to call areas using N1MM. You can have them just come in from like the 1 through 4 call areas if you want to be really selective about what you might be able to hear from the skimmers. And CW, people will be moving around a lot. So you generally want to have your packet spots time out and within 10 minutes or so. You could use longer for sideband because people, once they get a frequency, they tend to stay there if it's a good one. On a skimmer, everybody gets skimmed when they call CQ within a couple of calls. So everybody has run potential, and especially if you're fresh meat on Sunday, they will find you, and they'll find you quickly, and hopefully they'll be able to copy it through the bedlam. But it's fun. It's a fun thing to do for CW, not so much for phone. On Sunday, like well, we talked about the quantity of callers on Sunday. Another thing we can encourage people to do is set up your N1MM to spot everything you work on search and pounce. This is more important for phone, most important for phone, not so much for CW because they'll probably already been spotted by the time you work them. But unless you find an error from somebody that spotted one, it's not the one skimmed or the skimmer's getting broken calls or something. You generally don't want to do that. So I only encourage the automatic spot search and pounce spots on phone, but definitely do it for phone. Again, the spot timeout should be 30 to 60 minutes on phone. I'd make it quicker than that for CW. And we talked about the CW spotting being replaced by skimmers. And we talked, I think we covered this history file too. Generally, there's a pretty current history file available for download from N1MM website. And it's usually pretty good. You just have to, like, again, you have to be careful of this section, make sure everything matches, because a lot of that stuff can change. The precedent can change, the section, if they're running portable. So it requires a little more careful listening these days than it used to, because people are more mobile these days. We talked about using it as a cross-check, double check tool, which is very good. If you with any of these things here, if you're trying it for the first time, test it out long before the contest. Just try typing in calls and see if it comes up okay. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to some of the more experienced PBRC members, and maybe they can help you. Or you can get on the N1MM forum if you're using that kind of logging software, and somebody will help you out. So to increase participation this year, we're stepping up activity on the reflector, talking it up on the reflector regional meetings. And we have a lot of online meetings, so you can rate other regions' contests easily, meetings easily, and talk it up there. And but we want to encourage the chapter leaders to motivate their regional participants. And if for some reason you can't operate and you have a station available you're not using, and you're comfortable hosting a guest, it's a good way to earn 5 million points without your own operation, and it helps somebody else out. You might have a remote station that's available, or other ideas, and some people just have no station available. They might want to participate with a multi. So definitely reach out if you got something available along those lines to build the club score and help somebody have a fun weekend. If somebody needs some last minute antenna work or equipment work, please reach out on the reflector or your friends and see if they can help you out with any last minute repairs or enhancements to the station. And again, I'd like to encourage if nothing else, get on and be a spotter on phone, because there's always a dearth of phone spots to work. And especially if somebody's on a lesser band, if you see a PVRC or on 10 meters calling to or something strange like that, you want to spot them right away and give them some QSOs before they have to leave. And it really does help the contest in general, and it helps the club members on phone. And of course, when it's all over, we have to send in our logs and make sure you mark it for Potomac Valley Radio Club spelled out. And make sure it does go in for Potomac Valley Radio Club rather than just PVRC or some other abbreviation that might be misconstrued as the wrong club. The log submission is online and due within 5 days, as most of the contests are these days. So make sure you don't dilly-dally getting your log in, and make sure you save a copy of your the robot receipt that said your log was received successfully. If you don't get that, then you might want to check and make sure it actually was received, and try resubmitting it, and check the reflector if anybody else is having a problem, but normally it works pretty well. So pretty much I would expect the conditions to be same as last year. It might be slightly better on the high bands because we're starting to see some sunspots, but we're going to be working mostly short skip anyway. So we're not running J's or Europe. We're trying to work California or maybe Hawaii and Alaska is the furthest reach. So 20 and 40 are really your best bets. You're really your money bands for the daytime, and 40 and 80 probably in your for your evening band. And we're reminded that there's no broadcast below 7,200. If you can eke out a frequency below 7,200 on phone, you'll clean up. It's a really great place to be. But 71, 78 is the general cutoff. So I've had good luck all over the phone band. I've been up at 72, 97, I think, and done okay. When usually on Sunday night things get slow, you'll work a ton of 2x3s. They're not really in the contest, but you can talk them through a QSO, and you'll get a lot of uniques in your log that are worth the same amount of points as the normal contesters. Again, you want to try to get on 80 before it gets long, and sometimes it'll shorten up late at night. But it can get really long and hard to work back into the East Coast, which is where you really want to be, because it can get noisy and it's hard to work Midwest and West Coast from here on 80 if you're running a modest antenna. So that's why I encourage people to get to low end bands early, at least to check things out, see how you can do, and make at least a brief foray down there when the skip is short. Like I said, 10, 15 will be of limited use, especially 10 meters. You never know, but it could surprise you, especially on phone. But unless we get some like e-skip opening or something like that, even if it's open, there won't be that much activity. But it's worth checking it out. And especially if you're running assisted, watch for spots for 10 and 15. And you can watch DX maps to see what kind of activity is going on 10 and 15 without actually going there. Again, it's all about rate. So, and you're only working stations one at a time. So unless 15 meters is really in pretty good shape, where you got a pretty decent rate, or you're working different people, you work on 20. You want to pretty much just stay on 20 if you're single radio. Then you put your second radio on 15 and 40, kind of bounce back and forth. So for full time, generally you want to start on 20 and move to 40. It can be after an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours. And if you're running two radios, it makes it easy to make the choice. When your rate increases on 40 above what it is on 20, at a consistent pace, it's time to go to 40 or the next lower band, or even 75 when that rate increases. Again, you need to get there when the rate when the skip is short, because you may not work those short skip stations on the high bands ever unless you get the propagation where you beam west and you work back into the East Coast. Stay on 80 and or 40 all night long, and check 160 every once in a while if you want to. And then look for your first break around 2 or 3 a.m. on Sunday morning, and be ready to get on like within about 4 hours after you take your break, 3 to 4 hours. And normally, whatever rate you give up on Sunday morning, you're not going to match it when you get back on. So unless it's really, really, really slow, everything's gone super long and you can't work anybody, you generally want to try to stick it out on till 3. Yeah, it's usually 3 a.m., 2:30, 2 at the earliest, probably 3 a.m. if things are really good. And it's for the part-time operator, we talked about being fresh meat on the band. So people will flock to you for QSOs, especially on CW, because you'll get skimmed immediately and you'll have an instant pileup. And 40 and 75 will be great evening bands, especially 75 meters. I found not so much 80, but on CW, but 75 meter phone is like an endless supply. So it's good. It's very good to stick it out there and make sure you can hear people and have a good frequency. Again, anytime you can get on is better than no time getting on. And if you do get on for phone, put out some spots, tune around, especially find PVRC, but spot other guys that haven't been spotted, and have fun spotting stations on Sunday, especially when things are slow. And like for sweepstakes, of course, you don't need fancy antennas. You just need a low dipoles, and if you have high power, you're high power, but it doesn't have to be anything great. And as long as you keep your butt in the chair and put forth the effort, you'll put up with a big score for the club and a big score for you. Okay, K3, I guess Jim put this in, K3WI is a winning formula for making 1,000 sideband QSOs in just over 12 hours. Show up on Sunday morning with a kilowatt and start calling CQ. 80 and 40 are particularly good before sunrise, and they're good usually during 40, especially is good in the morning, pretty late. So as it shortens up, you'll work into the East Coast. So as long as the rate's reasonably good there, you can spend a lot of time on 40 Sunday morning. And again, we talked about being fresh meat, so it's always a nonstop fun run fest. Part-timers with modest stations showing Sunday because they're wanted by everybody. For low power limited antenna operations, late Saturday, all day Sunday are usually most productive times. Once the rest of us have to start looking for people to work. And again, the second hottest band might be actually easier for you to make QSOs on if you're signal challenged. Avoid large pileups on the spots. If you're kind of low power and not a great signal, and you hear a couple of large stations calling, and you might stick them in a memory, or just come back in a few minutes. I'll work the ones that are further down the list. Another thing you can do is when you're working assisted is watch the signal strengths in the multiplier, or whatever you call that, new QSO list, and try to call the ones that have the strongest signal strengths, because they're typically the ones you'll be able to hear the best if you're using selective spots. And we talked about pouncing if you need to listen and pre-fill parts of the exchange. If you're like running on a second radio, running on one radio and S&Ping on another radio, and you can pick off one every few QSOs you make on the run radio. You can pre-fill the information, then pop your call in and work them quick and go back to running. So the sweepstakes dates this year are November 6th, November 8th, that weekend. It starts at 21Z and runs till 0300Z on Sunday night. And sideband is November 20th to 22nd. Operate no more than 24 hours or 30 hours. Off periods must be at least 30 minutes in length. And listening time counts as operating time officially. But N1MM will tell you what your official off time is. So I don't worry about that too much. Again, the log submission deadline is 5 days. So make sure you get your log in Monday or Tuesday after the contest, maybe even Sunday night if you have some energy left. And the log submission is online at this contestlog-submission.arl.org. So there's a link in the rules for all these contests now to submit your log. And of course, go PVRC. Do we have a QSA? Do we have a question and answer Q&A? Okay. How do I bring that up? Click on it.
So we can see people.
Yeah, maybe. There we go. So everybody have any comments, queries before we sign off here? Do I have to, maybe I have to unmute people. What's that?
You're not muted.
I'm not muted, okay.
Unless you press that red button and it's flashing. No, you should be
No,
okay.
okay. Anybody out there have a comment, query? Okay.
Hey,
Oh,
hey,
is that Gary?
yes. Where do you find Northwest Territory?
Well, basically when if you're beaming it, you mean what time of day or whatever? Or
Yeah, I mean,
frequency?
it's so hard to work, especially that one station was there for years and they're gone.
Yeah.
So where do you like to find, where are your best shots at it?
Well, typically they hang out lower in the band and they peak around dusk for us. So around sunset. And so like if you have a beam, you beam northwest or like maybe at 300 degrees, and that's where you get your Alaska station or Northwest Territory. It can be a little further north for Northwest Territory. It kind of depends on what you have for a beam, but with a 3-element tri-band, it's pretty broad. So you can just angle it a little bit north and you'll pick them up if they're calling or if you're looking around for them. But that's normally how I pick them up. And you might have to, if you're following the next lower band rule of mine for the short skip, you may have to make a foray up a couple bands. Like If you're on 40, you might have to go to 20 or 15 briefly to find them. I generally don't advise chasing multipliers because they're not worth that much for the points. So it's because it's all about rate. But if you, especially if you have second receiver or second radio, especially, you can take the time with the second radio, and normally they'll be in the bottom 25 is what I've found.
Okay, great.
And where there isn't a lot of sweepstakes activity to start with.
Thanks.
Sure. Anybody else have a question or comment or? Okay, nothing heard. So, yep. So thanks for attending, and good luck in sweepstakes. Good luck in worldwide this weekend.
Thanks, Ty.